Thank you for that introduction. I want to start by saying what a privilege it is for me to be here today with this esteemed panel that we all hold in such respect. And as an elected member of the Musqueam Chief and Council, I want to welcome all the chiefs, council members, and First Nation community members that are here today on behalf of not just Musqueam, but our brothers and sisters in the Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. When we look at the importance of the discussion that's taking place in this province and in this country on what we are going to do with regard to the strategy that's being presented in the area of LNG, I am considering the amount of time that we have to spend with these fine elected leaders and how the dialogue can continue to take place. Because I think the short time that's been allotted is something that should be considered when we recognize the importance of including First Nations in the ongoing dialogue of any resource extraction in this province in consideration of the consultation and accommodation that we all know that we hold in our communities. So I know that you are going to get a lot of information from these panel members. We are going to try and hold the time so that there can be an opportunity for questions and answers. And I am going to stop now and introduce all of the panel members and then go into detail as they come up to speak. So we have Chief Derek Orr from the McLeod Lake Indian Band. We have Kim Baird from Tsawwassen, Chief Ellis Ross from the Haisla, Chief Gary Reese, Chief Charlene Gale, and Ross Wilson. The first person we're asking to come up is Chief Derek Orr from the McLeod Lake Indian Band. One of Derek's primary goals was for the McLeod Lake Indian Band to reach a stable economic platform. The McLeod Lake Indian Band Chief and Council has strategically positioned the band to take advantage of the many opportunities within their traditional territory and also to develop and build community projects that will benefit all members of the McLeod Lake Indian Band. Chief Orr. 5 minutes.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Chief Derek Orr, and I'd just like to acknowledge that we're on the Coast Salish territory and acknowledge Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. I'm happy to be here to share our story with you, and it's hard to do that in 5 minutes, so I'm going to be rather frank. McLeod Lake Indian Band, I was first elected chief in 2000. I started as a receptionist and worked my way up. Over a period of 6 years, I was in the youth position and a number of others, and then had the ability to run for chief and gained enough support, and won my first election by 12 votes. And a win is a win, they said. So I got in, and this was in 2008, and that was the time that the world economy crashed, and it was pretty bad. We had to do some major budget cuts. We cut our budget by $4.1 million and scaled back to about a 3-day work week. Over that time, we really settled down and really organized. We got the right people in the right places and managed to start to get some movement. Money is always a challenge in First Nations and having the capacity to do that. So we ended up hiring the right people, and as a new green leader, I didn't know a lot, and thank God I had a number of people to help guide me, and we had a good council that wanted to make good decisions for our membership. So we continued to move on and forge deals, and a lot of them were economically, because it's my belief that economics play a role in moving forward. It allows us to buy and do programs and be efficient and buy the stuff that we need to operate within our territory. We own 2 companies and really work hard to be involved in every aspect within our territory. We have a construction company, we have a logging company, and we just purchased Duzcho Forest Products. It's a sawmill that'll use the wood that's being burnt in the bush right now. We're going to be cutting cants and sending them over to overseas to Europe and to Asia for sale, so it's very good. As we go forward, LNG has been a big part, and we are meeting with a number of companies as well as the government. And as we go forward, it's quite difficult for us as we see a lot of development on the land. And we're really trying to balance moving forward with, I guess, responsible environmental sustainability and trying to have an economic development piece of that. And I know that there's been a lot of talk that LNG is going to be this great big productive thing for BC and Canada, and I think it can, but this is a major development that's going to be going on and impact a lot of the Treaty 8 First Nations. And I think there's a real disconnect between what's going to happen upstream and just the benefits of that. I see, as over the last 6 years as a chief, a number of changes through the land. And as a representative and elected leader from our band, I need to make sure that I have the membership at our up front and always making decisions on their behalf. And as we go forward, we're being really cautious and actually extended an invitation for the Premier to come up to really talk about some of the challenges that we have moving forward and to try and find some of those solutions collaboratively, as I do feel that there's been I think there could be more dialogue, and we're hoping that that comes about really well. But as it goes forward, we've been able to eradicate over $18 million in debt. And when I was first elected, our council had to really strip down to bare bones, reorganize, and use our money efficiently like anybody else. Moving forward, we want to make sure that we have all the opportunities in our community. And the Premier talked about wealth, and that's a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And to me, wealth is a healthy community. It's a healthy environment with productive land that our members will be able to hunt, fish, and trap on for eternity, basically. And as we go forward, that's kind of the main goal. And trying to balance that with economic development is a challenge with all the activity in our territory now. And we're really trying to make those partnerships and develop those relationships so that we can have our voices heard. And it has changed back from the days of the W.C. Bennett Dam and when they just flooded the valley and ran over the trees and didn't utilize the resources. As we go forward, our forest products is using the cutoffs that are being burnt in the bush. We want to utilize every resource, and that's going to provide jobs, economic opportunity, as well as provide benefits for our members so that we can continue to buy resources, buy land, and to continue to grow our membership and our ability and to grow our wealth in a holistic way. So I'm happy to be here and to share some of the positive aspects of economic development, but really make you aware of some of the challenges that we face as a First Nation and some of the challenges that we're going to have moving forward, and really frank discussions that we're going to need to have to make sure that the water is safe, the environment is safe, and that it's sustainable for all of us moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Derek. The next person I am proud to introduce is Kim Baird. She's the owner of Kim Baird Strategic Consulting and advises on First Nation policy, governance, and economic development, as well as consultation, communication, and engagement issues. Previously, she was the Chief Treaty Implementation Director and Chief Negotiator for the Tsawwassen First Nation, where she negotiated and implemented British Columbia's first urban treaty through the BC Treaty process, and I am proud to call her a friend. Kim, over to you.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm very honored to be here, and especially since I don't have a huge LNG project sort of in my path at the moment, although I'm working with First Nations that do. But I would like to extrapolate my experience in the Tsawwassen Treaty experience and apply it to what I see as the LNG opportunity in British Columbia. but it is only a real opportunity if, you know, aspects of external reconciliation with the First Nations and government and industry get resolved. And I mean that in a very generic sense. We find that a lot of words in First Nation context are loaded with lots of legal baggage, but I think as important as the external relationships that need to be forged, even more important is the internal work that has to happen with First Nation communities to be able to accept these projects, and that's based on having adequate information. I reflect upon the time when we were trying to make a decision in our community about the treaty and the immense pressure our community was under from government, from industry, from a bunch of outsiders, quite frankly. And at the end of the day, you know, the rights and title holders have to make decisions in the best interest of their community and their territory. And that takes a leap of faith to some degree to be able to provide adequate information to the community and to ensure that they're doing the absolutely best job they can for their community. So this LNG opportunity is complex, and I think everyone's going to have to take a bit of a leap of faith. I think it's a new industry in BC. The whole economy is kind of hinging on it right now. And I think that means that it's an opportunity for innovation, for collaboration, to ensure that everyone's at the table, and even the public policy decisions that are being made that are going to have long-term impacts on everyone should have frank and open dialogue about those things that are going to impact everybody, and ensure everyone has adequate information about fracking and the environmental consequences of the economic opportunity. So, you know, those are my initial thoughts about the opportunity in BC and the need for everyone to work together to come up with viable solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And I have to apologize, two things as the moderator. One, I can't see the time, so I don't know who's organizing here, but I don't have a watch of my own, and I can't watch the time, so I apologize. My eyes are too bad to read that. The other thing is, if anyone has questions as they're speaking, please write them down, and so that they can be brought up here. We're going to try and have enough time at the end for questions and answers. So it is now my distinct pleasure to introduce Chief Ellis Ross. Ellis Ross is probably known by most people in this room. He was elected Chief Councillor of the Haisla Nation in 2011 and was re-elected in 2013 by acclamation. He has been a full-time councillor since 2003 when he began to focus on Aboriginal rights and title and economic development issues. In 2012, Premier Clark appointed him as the inaugural chair of the Aboriginal Business and Investment Council. BC Business Magazine named him to BC's Power 50 in 2012, and Canadian Business Magazine in 2013 named him one of the 50 Canadians who exert the most influence on the country's business climate and community. He has worked for the private sector, the public sector, and operated his own business in partnership with his brothers through the lean 90s. And most of us in First Nations communities know him best from the basketball court. Chief Ellis Ross.
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me to this conference. I looked at the agenda and it talks about the benefits of natural gas. There's no doubt about it that our people are benefiting. All our people are working, they're getting mortgages, they're getting cars, they're getting RSPs, and that's mainly what we're after, is basically to build a future for our young people today and build a future for our people for the next 20, 30 years. But I really want to talk to you guys about was reconciliation. I've heard a number of times at a number of different venues, politicians love this term, lawyers love it, case law is all about it, but I have never come to a working example of what reconciliation means on the ground for somebody that just wants a job. And in terms of that, it just dawned on me after 10 years of working on trying to force BC to recognize our rights and title in terms of the projects and getting the proponents to try to understand rights and title, we've gotten to a point now where I think we have a working example of what reconciliation means on the ground. Right now, we have a protocol working with BC that addresses our rights and title with every affected ministry. But more importantly, we have proponents sitting at our table saying, can we get your interest into our permit application before we apply to the province? And we agree, and we put our interest into our application, then they submit it. When the province gets that permit application, they double check to see if we're on board with what is in that permit application. And that is how permits get approved in our territory now. If that is not a working example of reconciliation, I don't know what is. On top of the benefits that we're getting, jobs, contracts, revenues, we're getting all that. And this is without a treaty. So it's a very loosey-goosey protocol that we have with the province. We don't have one with Canada. We don't have that kind of working relationship with Canada. But without a treaty, without a full-fledged protocol, and without the rhetoric, more importantly, about reconciliation, and mainly looking for the opportunities for those young people to get a job so they can be independent, is what we're after. Because we believe that you can't have an independent nation unless you have independent members. Because if you don't, all you're doing is transferring the responsibility of looking after band members from Canada to the band council, and that's not what we want. We want our members to be self-sufficient. We want the nation to be sitting at the table and not essentially making decisions, but influencing those decisions. In terms of what we want to achieve next, well, we want to achieve the same type of working relationship with Canada. It's going to be tough going. But if I was going to summarize what our intention are for the next 20, 30 years, I'd start by saying the legacy of the treatment of Indians in Canada is a very sad story. And you can't fix it. And I'm not here to fix it. But it's not going to happen again. Not in our watch. If you haven't noticed by now, times have changed. You've got to get our interest on the table, and you've got to accommodate it. If you don't, your project's not going anywhere. And I know that affects everybody, locally, regionally, provincially, nationally. So if you're not on board, get on board. And for the companies working in Haida territory right now, they get it. The provincial government gets it. And look, we're still here. The province is getting ready to succeed that we haven't seen in decades. It's not a bad thing to accommodate rights and title. Embrace it. Accept it as part of the business, accept it as part of the economic fabric and the social fabric that makes up BC and Canada. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellis. I'd like to introduce Chief Gary Rees, otherwise known as Mayor Gary Rees. He has spent the last 28 years actively involved in local politics at the band council level. For the past 14 of 16 years, he has held the position of chief councillor.
You know where to work that?
At the time has led the community in band from the depths of bankruptcy, unemployment, and suicide to a position where band companies now employ almost 500 people and generate more than $200 million in revenue every year. Mayor Rees leads with strength and a resolve to bring what is best for his community, the members living around the world, and for the Pacific Northwest with the LNG opportunities. As in his own words, we want to make sure that the LNG development, while done in a way that protects our environment and sea resources, is for the Northwest and not just in the Northwest. Chief?
Thank you. And thanks for the invitation and inviting me here today. Lac Lam's ideas on LNG opportunities and some of the challenges in British Columbia. I have been involved in the governance of our band for the past 26 years now and held that position for almost 15 years. We have 12 councillors, which I have some of them here today, and I'd like to recognize them. They have a huge task in front of them and a huge job to do. And Lac Lam's band, which comprises of 9 tribes. Lac Lam's has strong roots in northern British Columbia, going back more than 10,000 years. We are one of the largest First Nations in British Columbia, where we have close to 3,700 members. And our traditional territory includes north of Grassy Point all the way down past the Prince Rupert Harbor and the Skeena River. We have relied on the abundance of fish and sea resources from the Skeena River and the Prince Rupert Harbor area for thousands of years. The Prince Rupert Harbor was our traditional winter home for 36 of our ancestors' villages sites. Have been extensively studied. To this day, the Prince Rupert Harbor and the Skeena River remain extremely important to my people. The Skeena supports the second largest salmon run in British Columbia. And not only to us, this is important for the commercial fishery, the other First Nations up and down the Skeena and the recreational sectors. If we let new developments significantly impact or destroy the fisheries and the marine environment tied to Prince Rupert Harbor and the Skeena River, we will have all failed my people and all of British Columbia. And we will do everything possible not to let that happen. We have come a long way in the past 15 years, from 95% unemployment in my community to 95% employment today. We have a community now with an $11 million leisure center, including 25-meter swimming pool and a 50-meter water slide that had 52 user days last year. We had paved roads, sidewalks. We are working really hard to improve our housing, having contributed more than $4 million to renovations over the past 3 years. We are now in the planning stage for 20 new homes and a new office, band office, a youth center, and a new office for our 9 LA tribes. We are now constructing a $20 million school that will finally allow us to go up to grade 12 in the community. 15 years ago, we decided to fight for our people. We built a very simple business strategy that addressed capital, capacity, and risk, which we still follow today. We want the best for my people, and we are working hard for the Northwest and for all of British Columbia. We want to take advantage of the potential benefits from LNG. If it can be done sustainably and with no impacts on the sea resources of the Skeena River that we have relied on for more than 10,000 years. Sound business decisions have led to many successful enterprises for Lac Lamps. We now operate in industry including forestry, fishing, construction, engineering, and development. One of the things we like to tell people is we have an office in China that was done for a very simple reason. We understand the importance of relationships and could not build a relationship with our customers and potential customers sitting in British Columbia. We really work hard at building relationships. Without a relationship, you cannot understand other points of view. You cannot work to solve the many challenges that the LNG sector will face to mutual benefit. The Lac Lamps Business Development Group includes 12 enterprises, including the Coast Simpson Fish Plant, Coast Simpson Resources, North Coast Constructors, and Embark Engineering. In total, our companies employ almost 400 people, of which 45% are not band members. We generate almost $2 million annual in revenues, and we are expanding our business development to take advantage of LNG, and we want to be able to demonstrate that LNG is not just in British Columbia, but is for my people in all of British Columbia. In planning for my presentation today, 4 questions arose. How should proponents approach First Nations if they want to obtain a social license? Are First Nations open for business and engage in industry? What expectations do First Nations have of industry? What do successful partnerships between industry and First Nations look like? Can we share success stories? I would like to respond to these questions, which are important to all of us. In response to the first question, I suggest the first and most important thing any organization should do is build a relationship with us. A relationship is not built by coming and presenting your plans. It is built by learning about our history, our culture, our special relationship with the land and marine resources, and by learning what is really important to us. Some proponents have been extremely engaged and others do not take the time at all. Some are working with us to solve the challenges and some are not. BG Canada is one of the companies that is really working hard with us to solve the challenges, and we respect and thank them for that. We surveyed our members to get their feedback on LNG development in our traditional territory. I would like to share some of the quotes from the survey and then some numbers. Our well-being, which includes the environment, is more important than the economy. Our environment and marine resources are the most important. They have sustained our people for 15,000 years. Clearly, no amount of money will convince our members to agree to anything that will put our marine environment and marine resources in jeopardy. Proponents need to understand that if we believe a project will have a material negative impact on our marine resources and environment, there will be zero support. Here are the results of the survey. 36% undecided about LNG. 36% are opposed to LNG due to the risks that they see to the marine environment and sea resources. And 38% support LNG development, but only if it will not have a material impact on our marine and sea resources. Are we open for business? The answer is absolutely yes. We have a copy of a book here where we're doing business with companies. And we have a booth out there where anyone can go take a look at it. We are really proud of our efforts, and we are working to ensure that LNG projects are British Columbians and not just in British Columbia. We want these projects to proceed and have already bid on more than $2 billion in work related to LNG in the hopes that we can work together to solve the challenges. We have a huge stake, as do all British Columbians, in making this work. But we will never put our economic interests in front of our environmental responsibilities. No amount of money or opportunity will convince us to change our values. The Lac Lamps has knowledge learned over centuries of caring for our traditional territory, our resources, and the environment. We are unified in the belief that any LNG project that falls within our traditional territory must be in accord with our traditions and must not impact the environment and the marine and sea resources that have sustained my people for more than 10,000 years. What expectations do First Nations have of industry? The answer is really quite simple. Take the time to understand our values, our expectations, our goals. Work with us to address the environment challenges and adequate and viable scientific research. We are putting our words into action so that we can address the potential impacts from a scientific basis. We have a team of 5 PhDs working with us, along with our fishery research group in the Prince Rupert Harbor as we speak, adding to baseline data that is important to making valid scientific-based assessments and decisions. We need to know the impacts of these projects. British Columbians have the right to know. These projects pose a very real and present danger to the second largest salmon run in BC. And before developing decisions can be made, we need to have an adequate scientific basis to make informed and reasoned decisions. I think I'm done. If my time's up.
Long ago.
I could have more, but
Hope I did
thanks.
that right.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you looking at the time and making sure that you're going to give the others some opportunity. Next, Ross Wilson, the Executive Director of the Metlakatla Stewardship Society. Mr. Wilson is serving as the Executive Director for the Metlakatla Stewardship Society, and this oversees the territorial lands, waters, and resources on behalf of Metlakatla First Nation. He has worked in the environmental field for over 8 years and also had the honor of serving as his nation as a councillor and chief councillor. While sitting as the chair of the Heiltsuk Tribal Council, Mr. Wilson served as an executive member for the Coastal First Nations, and he continues to reside in our beautiful Northwest Coast. Ross,
Can I?
do you want to come here? Sure.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Wendy. About 4 years ago, the leadership in Metlakatla participated in a strategic planning session, which consisted of the Governing Council, the Development Corporation, and the Treaty Office. The purpose of this session was to discuss the progress of their programs, but also to address the fact that many of their staff were doing referrals off the side of their desks, and they weren't doing that work justice. So it was then that they decided to hire a couple of staff to start taking on some of the workload, but also to find funding to create the Metkatla Stewardship Society. I was hired just over a year and a half ago. The staffing of this program grew from 2 to 3 to a full-time staff of 12, with contractors and consultants and part-timers, with a total staff of 24 people in that time frame. And 90% of that workload was LNG. So you can imagine the kind of madhouse I work in. The other day you heard madhouse in a good way, sorry. Yesterday you heard the Premier, and today talk about the progress of LNG. And my job, the Stewardship Society, is to make sure that the work that's been done on behalf of the nation is done to the standards that we want. So part of the workload that we have within our office is to first hear the proponents when they want to propose something. The Development Corporation and the Governing Council inform the proponents that if you want to continue on with the proposal, they have to sit down with the Stewardship Society. We then look at the protocol agreement that will basically lay out the relationship between the proponent and ourselves. It will then lead into the development of a negotiated funding so that we can participate in the environmental assessment process. That's where the majority of our funding comes from. The amount of interest in the Coast-Tsimshian territory, which is Lac Walams and Metkatla, is astounding right now. We have 8 proponents all submitting their interest at the same time and all expecting us to do work at the same time. And my staff is running ragged. It's something that the Governing Council, the Development Corporation, and the membership of Metkatla say stewardship has to be done right because you're looking at the future for our access to food, social, ceremonial, the land, the water, and the resources that they enjoy.
Tell us.
I think one of the questions that was given to us, whether we get to it or not, was what keeps First Nations up at night? I can speak for myself. It's the fact that I'm afraid I'm not doing this right for Metkatla. I'm afraid we're going to oversee some issues that's going to come around in the near future and really affect the membership and their access to the lands, waters, and resources.
Who wants a pen?
And I tell you, I have a lot of sleepless nights, but I love my job. I don't know that if many of you know where Prince Rupert is, or Coast-Tsimshian territory, it's a beautiful part of the world. And it's our job to protect it. And I hope that industry can see the value in the message that we're giving you. Because I listened over the past year and a half about the billions of dollars that have been talked about for this initiative. And our stewardship program has to fight for a few $100,000 so we can do our work. And it's not just Metkatla. It's all the other First Nations that have the same interest. So I think in saying it sounds to be a little bit of a downer message. It's not. It's just that there's got to be some due diligence here, and Metlakatla has never said no to business. They're always looking at the opportunities. But stewardship is first before development. That was the message Chief Layton wanted me to tell you. Thank you.
Thank you. I now have the pleasure of introducing Chief Charlene Gale, and if anyone was watching the news about 3 weeks ago, they will know who Chief Charlene Gale is, who took a very hard stand in her community and ensured that the rights that she was representing were protected. So we have a great deal of respect for Chief Charlene Gale, and I want to give a little bit of background. She is the chief of the Fort Nelson Band, and prior to accepting the calling, Charlene worked at Spectra Energy's Fort Nelson gas plant for 10 years and 2.5 years at their pipeline office. As the chief of the nation, she understands the importance of upholding the spirit and intent of their treaty by asserting her people's right to their land and taking responsibility for ensuring that our future generations are able to live their lives in their territory in a way that honors our ancestors. The Fort Nelson First Nation is a Dene Cree Nation that signed Treaty 8 with Canada in 1910. The Horn River, Liard, and Cordova are the 3 major gas basins in their territory. The LNG opportunity doesn't lie solely in dollars. We believe that we have a generational opportunity to work together to achieve the highest environmental standards in the world that will allow us to protect the integrity of our land and to honor the treaty that promises peace and sharing in our land so long as the sun shines, the rivers flow, and the grass grows. Chief Gale.
I'm just missing a chief here. Missing one. Chiefs. Just like to thank everyone for having the opportunity to speak with you guys and to tell you a little bit about our territory. So just so you know that the Fort Nelson First Nation is one of the Treaty 8 First Nations, and I would like to acknowledge our table here. I just asked the Treaty 8 chiefs to stand, please. And the Tribal Chief, Liz Logan, please. And I just want to let you know that the northeast corner of BC, which has the 4 major gas basins in British Columbia, and our nations have been the breadbasket of BC. So I'd like to acknowledge Tribal Chief Liz Logan from the Treaty 8 Tribal Association. Unfortunately today, Chief Yahi from Blueberry First Nation couldn't be with us. And I'd like to acknowledge Chief Davis, Chief Orr, Chief Hunter, Chief Parente, Chief Takoza, and Chief Wilson. So thank you for being here with us today. So as a Treaty 8 First Nation, we have lived with oil and gas activities in our territories for many years, and we have struggled with the intensity of this industry and the effects that it has had on our land and rights. We hope to change this. The LNG opportunity is not only about economic opportunities, the LNG is also about opportunities to do things right. Right from the upstream, all the way down to the pipelines, through the facilities to the tankers. It's an opportunity to revision our relationship with BC and with industry, and an opportunity to remind BC that we are treaty people, and so are they. And that through the treaty and through the voices of our chiefs, we need to be taken seriously when we address our concerns. It is an opportunity to remember that we have a huge responsibility to protect and manage our lands and to keep the traditions of peace and sharing and self-reliance alive and strong for generations to come. I want to talk a little bit about responsibility. Treaty 8 confirms our nation-to-nation relationship with Canada. Our elders tell us what treaty means, that we are free to live our lives as we always have without interference from the newcomers. In 1942, the United States government built the Alaska Highway in our territories. We have relatives that tell us the stories about seeing the machines and the US troops for the first time. It changed us in many ways. Many of our elders had never seen a mullah before the highway came through. After the highway was created, oil, gas, and forestry companies moved in. They created reserves, and our treaty partners used the police to move us off the land. Everything changed for us in a short 20 years because of that highway. BC's LNG strategy in the shale gas industry is the Alaska Highway of our generation. But here's the difference. Today, we have the opportunity to do better, and we have the responsibility that we will do better. There's no excuse this time. We know better, and we will do better. We have all the tools of the modern world at our disposal, and we have the power and experience from our teachings. This is what we say when we talk about striking the balance. We need to balance our ways of the Western ways, and we need to balance the impacts and benefits downstream with upstream and with the rights and responsibilities. Our ancestors fought hard for our treaty. And we know what happens to our land and to our people when our treaty is ignored. Canada, BC, our own leadership, all have a responsibility to honor that treaty. And that goes for the same for any investors or for any industry that want to operate in our territories. You have a responsibility to consult with us and to work with us. This is the only path forward for a common future for all of us to prosper. As Dene and Cree people, as Northern people, we are strong, we are self-reliant. We care for our neighbors, and we care for those who come to our lands. Our treaty is a peace and sharing treaty, founded on the principles of equality and sharing. We have never lost our connection to the land, to our rivers, or to our animals, or to our medicines and our plants. We have never given up our right to grow, to adapt, to change, and to be a part of the larger world on our own terms. Certainty is a word we hear a lot. It's what industry and government strive for. It is also what we, as the Fort Nelson First Nation Treaty people, seek. Shale gas companies are ready to invest billions of dollars to exploit the gas in our territories. In doing so, this will have profound impacts on our people and in our world as we know it. I always say that we don't own the land. The land owns us, and we must take care of it. So what does it take to get to an agreement, to get to certainty? It takes trust, openness, creativity. It takes respect from all parties. We have industry partners that have come to the table and that we're working through and working with to create these agreements. They have been creative and they have opened up their minds. And they're allowing us to show them that we're capable. We're capable First Nation people. But in many ways, we are just starting. We have worked hard for the past years, taking a new path, taking new risks, and starting small and working towards a common goal. These agreements need to be fortified by agreements with the government and strong legislation and regulation around the environment, the land, the water, and the air. This is what is important to us, first and foremost. We need to leave a legacy for our future generations. And as elected leaders of our community, we always are looking 7 generations ahead. There needs to be something for them. This is 150 years of extraction you're looking at taking from our territories. We need to keep our minds full of what we're really going to be leaving behind for our kids. As a person, I don't think about the now. I think about the future. And 100 years from now, I will not exist. But when I do look down, I want to be proud. BC and Canada must be ready to live up to the spirit and intent of the treaty by respecting us as managers and stewards of the land. They must be ready to get out of the way and allow us to create the balance and pursue our needs as people and to build those relationships on our land. So I thank you once again for allowing me to be here and to be a part of this dialogue. So Masi Cho, hi hi.
Ready for questions? Thank you, Chief Gale. We still have approximately 10 minutes. I haven't had anyone send me up any questions. Have there been any questions written out? Oh. Oh my goodness, okay. For the panel, do you see renewable energy for LNG facilities as a way to improve environmental performance and increase benefits, jobs, revenue to First Nations communities? So anyone from the panel want to take that?
Sure. I think that there's definitely an opportunity, but as I said before, there's also a lot of negative impacts. Like they talk about the reduction in greenhouse gas effects and CO2, but then on another, in other areas, they're using more water. So life's a web, and when you take from over here, it affects there. So for every positive, there's quite possibly a negative. So that just needs to be balanced.
Anyone else? Gary?
We recognize how huge these agreements are going to be for my people, and you know we have a pretty good idea what numbers there's going to be involved with it, and it's going to make huge changes for my people. But at the same time, as I mentioned, that you know, as long as it's not going to harm our sea resources and the environment, and we support that. You know, we won't depend on INAC with our funding with health and education and everything that's involved with that. We recognize how huge that is. It's going to make huge changes.
Thank you.
We don't mind looking at any type of project, whether it be renewable or not, but we won't look at speculation, and we won't look at anything that requires a subsidy. If business wants to take on that type of extra subsidy for a project, fine, fly at her. But we won't subsidize it using HISL money, and I doubt the taxpayer will want to pick that up either. So basically, if you want to put together a project like that, make sure you come with a full price tag covered off, because we're not going to cover it.
Thank you. What are the biggest environmental social concerns, and what are you witnessing? How can industry support processes that help address those major concerns? They actually said they wanted this for Chief Derek Orr and Gary Reese.
Well, I think there's a lot of movement that can be done, and it was talked about how companies are investing billions of dollars in the land. How about taking a chunk of that and investing into some of the projects and dealing with wildlife populations and water testing so that we can get baselines moving forward, so we can have some answers and to really make those standards available and get that knowledge out there so we can have measurements to see where we're at. And from what I've seen down the road since I've been a leader, there's been a significant depletion in the wildlife, and members are having to go further and further out to fulfill hunts, and that's one of our traditions. That I'm a hunter, but I haven't got a lot to do it a lot lately, but I enjoy doing that, and it's getting to be something that's a significant challenge.
Thank you. Gary?
Okay, thanks. You know, like in our territory, and right along the Skeena River, there's one proponent that wants to build a facility there, and it's right alongside the flora bank where we have huge concerns. Last year, our commercial fishermen couldn't even fish in Area 4 because of the low return of sockeye in there, and you know, that's really important to my people, and they've made that clear already. And you know, if you're going to be that close to a flora bank there, you don't know what harm is going to do there if you don't do the right studies. So we're really concerned with that.
Thank you. Charlene, did you want to say something?
I'd just like to say something. I'd like to say I think the sooner that industry, you know, starts working with the governments and the territories that, you know, where they want to operate, the sooner that projects can go ahead, because you'll learn more about us. There's places in our territory that are no-go zones, and there's places that we're open for development. And, you know, when we've been working with some of the companies like Apache, you know, that are very transparent and showing our people and having open houses and talking about 25-year development plans. You need to be open. You need to create that trust, and you need to create that relationship. But if you're just going to come to the door and let us know what you plan on doing, it's not going to work that way. There's a new way of doing business in the Fort Nelson First Nation territory, and we're governing our lands, and we're going to decide when and where and if projects are going to be going through. So it's simple as that.
Thank you. This one is for all the speakers again, and it's, what is your view on revenue sharing with First Nations in terms of overall value of the LNG projects going forward? Does anyone want to take that one? Do you want me to say it again, or you ready to answer? Okay.
I'm not a fan of revenue sharing if you're talking about revenue sharing with the Crown. I'd much rather address rights and title benefits with the proponent, mainly because revenue sharing is taking out of royalties that the Crown uses for the benefit of all BC and Canada. I'm talking about services like medical, roads, and everything else like that, and we're not in a position just yet to actually take on that task. And to be honest, our people take advantage of the services just like everybody else. We love the healthcare, we love the roads, we love shopping at Granville and all over the place. So I'd much rather see industry and First Nations work out a revenue sharing agreement if they can. But if you're talking about revenue sharing and overall about the project, yeah, we're all for it. But I really don't want to really affect services in BC and Canada unless we're able to step up to the plate and fulfill that service on our own as well, which we're not ready to do yet.
We're definitely in favor of revenue sharing, and I think each individual project is different, has different variables. However, I think that industry needs to up the ante a little bit. When we're talking about these big projects, and they're talking billions, and we're offered a lot less than that. I think for buying in, we not only want to be benefit in that area, but we're also building companies so that we can benefit in contracts and in jobs and training our people. We're currently developing a heavy-duty operators course that are working to get our members ready for some of the trades and the contracting that's going to come up. And as I said, we work to have the resources available so that we can assist and be available. But quite often, we're pushed aside because we're the First Nations, because we don't have the capacity. But I'm here to tell you we do.
Well, I think revenue sharing is an important part of a toolkit for First Nations to use. I think it's used in other regions for other infrastructure projects, and I think First Nations want to see ongoing benefits from these projects, and it definitely is a good tool to do that.
I think it's important, you know, everything we've been doing with proponents or anything in joint ventures, we're going for revenue sharing. And, you know, I always talk about in our territory there, when these proponents are going to be building there, that, you know, we don't get paid taxes. And, you know, like the city of Prince Rupert's going to get paid taxes, Port Ed's going to get paid taxes, the governments get paid taxes, but we don't because it's not on our reserve, so that's the things we look at.
Okay. Anyone else?
Metlakatla's strategy is a little different. A proponent comes in the room, they must sit down with the Stewardship Society to negotiate that protocol agreement as I described. And if the project looks like it's going to be approved both by the government and the proponent, the Development Corp comes in the room and then discusses that revenue sharing agreement. In addition to that, they support a long-term monitoring program for the Stewardship Society to oversee the life of the projects, whether it's a facility or the pipelines. That's their strategy.
I think it's important for industry to realize that, these resources are coming from the moccasins of the Treaty 8 First Nations. And when you talk about LNG, it's a clean energy and, pipelines are running through communities. But we have to realize that, the shale gas extraction is not very environmentally friendly. There's a lot of concerns when it comes to water, air, and the land. And our elders and our community members are very concerned. So I think that any agreements with government or with industry, that the communities that are affected the most need to be able to build up their communities. They need to be able to put environmental controls in place, and they need that capacity and they need those agreements to be meaningful. We're taking the brunt of the impacts, and I think that those agreements need to show that. We need to leave something for our generations to move forward on.
Thank you. We are at the end of our time. We do have a couple more questions, but I know that if we go into those, we're going to go over our time. I want to take this opportunity to genuinely thank each and every one of you for your commitment to your communities, for your commitment and resilience. It amazes me that after all these years, our people still sit here and say, with our rights, we have responsibilities, but we recognize with those responsibilities and those rights, we have to do it in some way that is in dialogue with the other people in this province. And even though we've gone through so many times that people have tried to come in and run over our communities, we still stand up, come to sessions like this and say, we are willing to sit down with respect and dignity and honor to talk with you about how we do develop in our territories and go forward for the benefit of all of our citizens in this country. So I do hold my hands up to you in appreciation of your time commitment. Thank you for being here today. Thank you.